You're on, David.
All right. Now, a lot of us when we were younger, we all kind of, when we were young boys, we grew up with these dreams of playing in the NFL or the NBA or being on TV as a big actor and all these kind of just crazy big dreams. And, you know, after a while, most of us grow out of that, but there are a few who stick with it and they just really, they discipline themselves and they practice harder than everybody else, and some of them have just amazing talent. But all of those people that we end up seeing on TV have usually spent just insane amount of time in discipline and preparing themselves in practice. And we've all heard the passage in Corinthians where it talks about running the race and discipline yourself. But there's one part just right at the end in 1 Corinthians 9:27 where Paul makes some important statements on discipline that I want to focus at. And so this morning we're just going to look at two observations about discipline, just two of them. And the first one that he makes is that we need to remain disciplined. And he gets that in the first part of the passage. It says, "But I discipline my body and keep it under control." And the discipline that Paul's talking about here is not a light thing. It's not this just kind of flippant, light deal that you don't take very seriously. Just the very word discipline, when we hear that, we normally think about being disciplined by our parents, or we think about having to work really hard. There's no kind of connotations that come with the word that make it anything other than serious. And even the context here is talking about an athlete who's running the race as a boxer and a wrestler and all these kind of things. And while we're not all Division I athletes or planning on being in the pros or anything like that, we're just going to be preachers. Discipline is very, very important. And it's something that we need to take seriously. Because if we're not disciplined in our own spiritual lives, if we're not disciplined in reading the Word and following after Jesus, then how are we going to be good at what we're supposed to do? Yeah, we're not athletes, but we still have to have that same type of discipline, because how much more serious is preaching the gospel and preaching the word than throwing a football around or throwing around a basketball? And so the second part of the verse right there when it talks about, and I keep it under control. You know, it's very interesting how discipline is held right in parallel with keeping your body under control, because you know, often when we sin and when we mess up, we throw around the phrase like, "Oh, I just lost control. You know, I just got distracted." And that's why self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. It's self-control is so important because our body constantly wants to get out of control, because we constantly just have this inclination sometimes to mess up and to do the wrong thing. And so we just have to be disciplined. We have to work, and we have to force ourselves to be disciplined, because it doesn't come naturally. That's the whole point of it. And so the application that, you know, so what? Like, okay, I'm supposed to be disciplined, but how do we do that? And that comes with being disciplined in reading the Word, being disciplined with prayer, like Jordan just talked about, being disciplined with fasting, being disciplined with worship, and just staying connected to Jesus. And so the first observation is that we need to remain disciplined. And the second observation comes right off of it. And it's that we need to remain disciplined to avoid disqualification. Right at the end, it says, Paul's talking, he says, "Lest I myself should be disqualified." And this is a hard statement from Paul. When he's talking about, you know, okay, discipline, yeah, it's important, I gotcha. But, you know, why? Why should I work harder than everyone else? Why should I spend hours studying the Bible? And why should I take all these classes where they teach me how to preach, where they teach me how to study, and they teach me how to do all these things? The why is right here. It's because if we don't do these things, we could end up being disqualified. You know, the reason probably most of us that we're trying to be pastors, that we're trying to get in the ministry, other than the fact that we're called, is because we want to do something that's worthwhile. We want to make a difference in the kingdom. We want to do our best to honor Jesus. But if we're not careful, if we mess around with sin, if we just let ourselves get out of control, we could get to the end of our lives and realize that it was all just kind of a waste. We just get disqualified from the race. And for a lot of you who watch college football, you probably remember Reggie Bush a few years ago. He's a big, powerful running back for the USC Trojans, and they were just a powerhouse for years. They were in the national championship, it seemed like, back to back to back, and they won countless games, and he even won the Heisman. And now he plays in the NFL and gets millions of dollars. But when he was in college, he broke some of the rules and got some money on the side. And so what happened is they took all of his trophies away. They took everything away from him and even punished the school. And now there's guys who were in middle school when he messed up are paying the price for what he did. Everything he did in college is an asterisk. He's completely disqualified from everything that he's ever done. And if we, as preachers, should take that even more seriously. I mean, I don't want to get to the end of everything that I've done and then find out it was worthless. How much more is that important than a football game? And right at the end of the verse, it says, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. That after preaching to others, that really caught me, just kind of like, wow, you know, after preaching. Because we think, you know, okay, biggest thing, I got to work all week because I got to preach on Friday, I got to preach on Monday, I got to preach, you know, we got this stuff, and then we're going to go into the ministry and we have to preach every single week, and that's kind of the big focus. That's the thing that you think about. But even if you do that, great. Even if you come up here in class and you wow everyone with your, you know, you give the best sermon, or you give the best sermon on Sundays one day, and all these kinds of things. Even after that, if you don't honor God throughout the rest of the week, if we don't follow Him, if we're undisciplined, if we just mess around with sin all the time, it's worthless in the eyes of God. And we have to take that very seriously. And I don't mean all this to be condemning or be discouraging, but this should be a gut check just for all of us, because the bottom line here is that we need to do all that we can to remain qualified. That's why we discipline ourselves. That's why we read the Bible more than anybody else. We're supposed to. That's why we're going to fast. That's why we're going to worship. That's why we're going to do all of these things, because we don't want to get disqualified. And sin is far too serious for us just to mess around with. And so the warning that Paul's giving us should just shake us to our core and make us double check and make us get even more serious. You know, the buzzword, get rededicated again, and just refirm our rate and get that second wind and keep running. So this morning, gentlemen, just make sure and check yourself again and get more discipline so that we can run this race with honor. So let us run, and let's run well.
Okay, David, total